Hey everyone, Father Warner here. We are in Monday of the 6th week of Easter. That's how quickly Easter has been moving, and Eastertide has been moving. And we are in chapter 16, verses 11 to 15. Now, very briefly, I want to take you to the beginnings, or just to do a little orientation with chapter 15, just as a kind of a recap, and then chapter 16. But please, I beg you, read your text. It's very important that you read the Bible, read the text in order for you to understand what I am teaching you. So in chapter 15, we saw a momentous turning point in the life of the church. Remember, this is the Council of Jerusalem, held somewhere between the years 48 and 50 AD. The apostles, the elders, Paul, Barnabas, Peter, James, all of them are met, and they have come to a decision. And that decision is that the Gentile converts do not need to be circumcised. Of course, there are restrictions put. They cannot worship idols. They cannot eat food offered also to idols, no fornication. And Paul and Barnabas were to set out on the second missionary journey, but we know that there is a fallout between Paul and Barnabas. Barnabas and his cousin John Mark, the writer of the Gospel of Mark, go to Cyprus, and Paul now takes Silas along with him. We are told straight away in our text, in the text of chapter 16, that Paul travels to Lydia. This is a place he has been before, and here he comes to Derbe and Lystra, and here he meets a person called Timothy. This is the same Timothy whom St. Paul will later on write one of the pastoral letters, St. Paul's letter to Timothy. And we are told that Timothy is, his father is a Greek, his mother is Jewish, and he himself has become a believer. So he is baptized and he becomes Paul's companion. They set out, or rather they want to set out on their second missionary journey and go to modern day Turkey, which is Asia Minor. But God, the Spirit of God, we are told very clearly, forbids them. Verse 6 of chapter 16 tells us that the Spirit of God forbids them from going to Asia. Don't mistake this Asia with our understanding of Asia. This is Asia Minor. And then Paul has a vision. And in that vision, he sees a man from Macedonia. Macedonia is modern day Greece. And the man says, "Come, we need your help." And we are told, and that's where our text brings us today. So I've given you a kind of a little introduction, and we are told that from Troas, you'll know the city of Troy. Troy was 20 kilometers north of Troas in Asia Minor. So from Troas, they set sail to Samothrace. They go across to Macedonia, and we are told that they travel to the city of Philippi. This is the same letter where St. Paul will write a letter to the Philippians. This is a leading city. It was a major Roman colony. So the Romans had established themselves here. It was a major colony of Macedonia. So they arrive here, and surprise, surprise, God simply puts that mission on hold. We are told very clearly in verse 12 of today's text, "We remained in the city for some days." You see, God may have sent them to a certain mission, but God also chooses His time. It's not just the place that God chooses very often, but God chooses the time, and their mission was simply placed on pause. But you'll also notice in verse 11 and verse 12 that these verses begin with the word "we set sail." These are called the "we" verses. We texts in the Acts of the Apostles. In some sense, it helps us to understand that the early church didn't run on the cult of one person. Yeah, this is a bad way to work ministry. Very often you see a one-man show in a parish, in a diocese. People may be qualified, they may be extremely qualified, but to have a one-man show is a very poor way of functioning. Developing team ministry, getting the parish council to work together, getting everybody on board is challenging. It's very, very challenging. But to have just one man on the top who takes all the decisions and doesn't work in collaboration with the rest is a very poor form of Christian leadership. And you can see Paul and Silas and Timothy are working as a team. Yes, they may have differences. We saw the differences that Paul had clearly with Barnabas. We saw people even separate and go different ways, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree, but we also need to work together. Now, we are told that in verse 13 that on that Sabbath day, they went outside the gate by the river. Now, there was no synagogue here, but you can see Paul and Timothy and Silas are faithful. There was a great Christian tradition among our parents and our grandparents that even when they went on a holiday, they always, if it was a Sunday, first asked, where is the local church? And they adjusted their holidays, even if it meant that they traveled a great distance to go find a church and to attend Sunday Mass. There is a tendency, and I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but there's a tendency today for us to say, oh, it's a holiday, we are on holiday, we can't seem to find a church to go to, and so let's simply skip Mass. And this is a bad trend that is growing in the church. You can see that it was the Sabbath day. They went outside the gate by the river where they supposed there would be a place of prayer. There was no synagogue, but there were some women there, and they sat down and they spoke to the women who had gathered there. And then verse 14 introduces us to a certain woman named Lydia. She was a worshipper of God and she was listening to them. She, very interestingly, was from the city of Thyatira. Now you'll ask me, where's Thyatira? It's in Asia. Now remember that Paul and Silas and Timothy were forbidden from ministering in Asia. Yet it was a man in Macedonia who appeared to them in a dream and called them over to help them. When they finally come to Macedonia, it is a woman that they encounter, and that woman is from Asia. So you see, in some way, God still has his plans in place. He didn't want them, the Spirit of God didn't want them to go and minister in Asia, yet it is in Europe, in Macedonia, in Greece, that they find a woman of Asian descent, and she is the one who is baptized with a whole entire household. Now, here's the very, and with this I want to end this teaching. We are told a certain detail, and that detail is that this woman was a dealer in purple cloth. Very interesting. She was a businesswoman. In a time and day when women were told to shut up and stay at home, this was a businesswoman, and she's dealing in purple cloth. Purple was a very expensive dye to have. It was a color for royalty. You'll remember in the narrative of Lazarus and Dives dresses up in purple. It was a color worn only by royalty, and she is dealing in a luxury good, literally. So the Bible also tells us of the role that women played in society, and then the role that women played in the church. I thank you for joining me. I hope this little teaching helps you to understand the first reading from Acts chapter 16 verses 11 to 15. Bye for now. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and do subscribe to this channel.